I go to a lot of clubs where people abhor evaluations. It terrifies them. Because there's one of two things that can happen. The first is you're overly enthusiastic and you go, wow, you're wonderful, you're brilliant. When you sit down, the sun went down. Which is not particularly helpful because the speaker doesn't know what to do again, and they also have nothing to improve. Kajik is a beautiful example. He's a great speaker. And the idea is you still want to give him one or two things to do to improve. The other thing that can happen, and I'm sure Eric has seen this once or twice, is you sometimes go to a club and the person with the best intentions in the world is really trying to help. Gives you a list of 10 things that you can improve. Oh, you can do this and this and this and this and this and this and this. And the poor speaker is going, I'm so bad, I should actually just go and hang myself. And the problem with that is you scare the speakers away, but you also scare away the visitors. The person who has never done a speech and is sitting there thinking, I'm going to speak next week. And they watch somebody speak and they think, wow, I wish I could do that. And the evaluator goes, yeah, but you could do this and this and this and this and this and this. So I'm going to give you some tips on how to evaluate more effectively so that the person hearing, whether it's the speaker or somebody in the audience, can hear it and do something with the information. The first thing is we need balance. To give you an example, pretend you're at school and you came home with 5 A's for the first time in your entire life. You got 5 A's for maths, science, geography, history, everything. 5 A's. Never got an A in your life before. And 1 E. Where's the attention normally? On the A's.
Yes.
I've never had it. I came home in standard 5 with 98% for maths. And my father said, what happened to the other 2%? And the number of people who say they've had exactly the same experience is incredible. And the thing is, if you pay attention to what's wrong all the time, people stop doing what's right. To give you an example, I'd been dating a girl about 5 years ago, long before I met my wife. I was dating this girl, we'd been dating for about 3 months. It was just before Valentine's Day. So I thought, it's a new relationship, let's start off with a bang. You know, yes, so to speak. So I thought I'd do something really spectacular. So didn't know much about the girl, only just met her really. 3 weeks in a relationship is nothing. So I phoned her sister and I said, what does she like? What's she interested in, etc. And I found out that her favorite food was lasagna. She liked white chocolate mousse. I like dark chocolate mousse. She liked white chocolate mousse. Burnt sienna roses. It took me a visit to 4 florists to find burnt sienna roses. Those are the orange ones with the dark tips at the top. And salt chocolates. Now at the moment Lindt has salt chocolate, but then nobody had salt chocolate. I had to go to the little chocolate shop in Sandton City to find salt chocolates. Now if you go out of your way and you do something amazing for somebody, and they say, wow, that's amazing, the flowers, where'd you get the flowers, the chocolates, would you do it again?
Yes.
Yeah. What I got was, there's no salt on the table. Fail. Now, that ended the relationship then and there. I told her to leave and she actually left. I gave the white chocolate mousse that I'd made from scratch to the security guard. But the number of times in our lives people focus on what's wrong rather than what's right creates an imbalance and ends up us focusing on what's wrong. It's like the speaker gets 10 things they could improve. For my PhD, the research I've done on this, there are 3 people from different fields of psychology and they all say exactly the same thing. It's absolutely fascinating. Dr. John Gottman is the relationship guru. Malcolm Gladwell talks about John Gottman in his book, The Tipping Point. Now what's amazing about Dr. John Gottman is he analyzes newlyweds. He videotapes them, and from a 3-minute video clip, you can tell with 80% certainty whether the relationship will survive. And one of the key things he's looking for is the ratio of positive statements to negative statements. And what he's found is there's a tipping point at 3 to 1. If you give somebody 3 positive statements, and I mean sincere statements, specific what they've done well, as an example in a speech, Kajik, I loved the humor when you described your mother. If I say, Kajik, you were funny, not helpful, because he doesn't know what to do again. But to give 3 specific things, and then 1 area to improve, what Gottman found is this tips the relationship positively. In fact, he found in relationships, even when people shouted and screamed, you know, the Italians and the Portuguese and the Lebanese, I don't speak the languages, I'm sure Eric will translate later, but doesn't matter if they shout and scream, if the positive ratios, positive statements were 3 times as many as the negative statements, the relationships thrived. Now, the second research that I came across, which was absolutely fascinating, said exactly the same thing. Marcel Lassade does research in high-performance teams. Now, his laboratory is a boardroom. So what happens is he analyzes teams in a boardroom, and they're doing a project, and what he does is, again, he videotapes them and analyzes everything they say and everything they do. And he found something quite interesting as well. It's called the Lassade line. 2.97 positive statements to each negative statement. It's close enough to 3 to 1, right? And he found that teams, as soon as they dip below that line, their profitability reduced. The retention of key staff plummeted, and customer scores dropped. And as soon as they went above 3 to 1, 2.97, profitability increased, retention of key staff increased, and customer scores increased. And that's what business is about. The third study I came across was Dr. Barbara Fredrickson. Now, she is one of the founders of positive psychology. She did a longitudinal study right across psychology and found the same thing. The ratio for successful relationships. She did a lot of studies after 9/11 of people who thrived after 9/11 as against those who were depressed. And she found the same thing. In their self-talk or the interaction with family and friends, if the ratios were above 3, their relationships thrived. As soon as they dipped below that, they struggled. You wouldn't belong to a relationship or to a team where somebody, every time you say something, they say, really, you think that's a good idea? And that's the idea. So what I've developed is a process to give feedback to the people when you're evaluating a speech, using that ratio. So the first thing you do is look at the language that you're using. As adults, we don't like to be told what to do. So if I say to Jono, what you should do is, what good speakers do, listen, I tell you, you should do this. There's a part of him that does the, you know, the little child thing. Who are you to tell me what to do? It still happens to me. Doesn't matter. He tells me, somebody tells me what to do, a part of me goes, really? The idea is to offer a suggestion. As an adult, if we say what you could try, what I suggest, what you could try next time, I'm acknowledging you're an adult and you have the right to choose. I'm giving you a suggestion and you can either accept it or reject it. But you're acknowledging the person you're dealing with is an adult. When we tell people what to do, most people get defensive. Okay, there are some compliant people, but most of us get defensive and shut down. So the idea is to offer a suggestion and start up with 3 things that you liked and be specific. So instead of, you were funny. I heard a speech a while ago, and the guy was describing his mother-in-law as a rhinoceros stumbling across the veldt with bubbles of snot coming out of her nose in an absolute rage. It is the most amazing picture I've ever heard of a mother-in-law. Luckily, my mother-in-law is nothing like that, but his mother-in-law apparently is. And it was such a beautiful description of the way she blundered into the situation. When I gave him feedback, I said that description was amazing. I got to see the way you see your mother-in-law. It's not the way everybody sees her, but I got to see the way you see it. So that's specific feedback. 3 things that I liked. Then 2 things that I feel you could improve, or let me offer you a suggestion of something that could work for you. 2 things. And to limit it to 2, I remember watching a speech about 2.5 years ago. And the guy was terrified. It was his icebreaker. And he stood up and he did this. And then he would look down, he would start talking, and he'd look up and he'd see people and he would twitch. But there was something that he did in the middle of his speech which was absolutely amazing. He paused and he talked about his family. my wife, and my daughter. Out of the entire speech was the one thing that really stood out. So I harped on that. And because he knew what to do the next time, it was excellent. I gave him one thing to improve. That was to write some keywords on a piece of paper so he would keep track, because he got a little bit lost in the middle of his speech. What is the one thing? There were lots of things that he did that could be improved. But what is the one, or what are the two things that could notch him up just a little bit? I saw his second speech. He was phenomenal. He got some coaching, he got somebody to mentor him, which made a huge difference. But his entire speech, he talked about his wife, and you could actually see him imagining her in front of him. And he would touch her hair. And it was such a tender moment. He still couldn't look at anybody, but he could look at his wife. He could imagine her in front of him. And there is something so beautiful when somebody knows what works as well as what to improve. So 3 things that I like, be specific. 2 areas I feel could improve, and demonstrate what you mean. A simple example, if you say, well, when you waved your arms, and you can ask Eric, well, our first couple of speeches, I looked a little bit like a drunk Italian. I tended to wave my arms far too much. And it was Graham Nichols who said, when you waved your arms, it was rather distracting. Next time I suggest hang your arms at your side. I know it feels a little bit uncomfortable, but it looks a lot more confident than when you wave them distractingly. And it was fantastic for me because I got to see exactly what I should be doing. So it was a positive experience. So if you think of the ratio, 3 things I liked, 2 areas to improve. So that's 3 to 2. It's not quite right? But if you give 2 clear demonstrations of what they should be doing instead, or what they could try, it becomes positive. So you've got 5 to 2. Summarize, because there's a lot of information to keep in your head, and end off positively with something that you particularly like. 3 things specifically I like, 2 areas I feel could be improved, and demonstrate what you mean by don't wave your arms around.